Annie Hall, which earned her an Academy Award. People reports Keaton died at her home in California.
Before her passing in October 2025, Diane Keaton lived a life full of luxury, wealth and extravagance. From relaxing on yachts along the Amalfi Coast, to buying expensive cars and vintage outfits, to owning beautiful mansions in Beverly Hills, this was the elegant world Diane created before her final goodbye. From stage lights to million-dollar fortunes. When Diane Keaton took her final breath on October 11, 2025, the world didn't just lose an Oscar-winning actress. They lost a woman who had quietly built a financial empire worth $100 million through a combination of strategic investments, savvy real estate deals, and back-end participation in some of Hollywood's most iconic films. This wasn't your typical Hollywood rags-to-riches story where fame leads to fortune and fortune leads to waste. This was something far more calculated, far more impressive, and infinitely more luxurious than anyone could have imagined. Diane Keaton didn't just collect paychecks and call it a day. She transformed modest Broadway salaries into real estate gold mines worth tens of millions. She turned back-end deals into perpetual money-printing machines that generated income for decades, and she did it all while maintaining that quirky, fedora-wearing, menswear-loving persona that made her a cultural icon. From cramped Manhattan apartments where rent barely got covered, to a sprawling estate worth nearly $30 million with hand-hewn beams and infinity pools, Keaton's journey was nothing short of extraordinary. Let's rewind to 1968, when a 22-year-old Diane Hall joined the original Broadway cast of Hair as an understudy. Her weekly salary hovered between $500 and $1,000, which sounds decent until you adjust for inflation. That's roughly $4,500 to $9,000 in today's money. Barely enough to survive in Manhattan. Barely enough to cover acting classes, a tiny apartment, and the occasional meal that wasn't instant ramen. But here's where Keaton's character truly emerged, revealing the principled eccentricity that would define her entire approach to wealth. When the production offered a $50 bonus for participating in the infamous nude scene at the end of Act 1, she refused. She turned down a 10% pay bump on principle, a decision that highlighted something crucial about the woman who would later build a $100 million empire. She valued authenticity over quick cash, understanding that certain compromises simply weren't worth making even when you're barely scraping by. After 9 months in Hair, Keaton auditioned for Woody Allen's Broadway comedy Play It Again, Sam, in 1969. She nearly lost the role because at 5 and 8, she towered over the 5 inches Allen, creating a visual dynamic that initially seemed problematic. But her self-deprecating humor won him over completely, and she earned a Tony nomination for Best Featured Actress, along with a salary of about $750 weekly. The show ran for 453 performances, netting her perhaps $20,000 to $30,000 annually in the early 1970s. Still modest by celebrity standards, still barely comfortable, but enough to survive while building invaluable connections in New York's theater scene. Then came the breakthrough that changed everything and laid the foundation for her eventual fortune. Francis Ford Coppola's The Godfather in 1972 cast her as Kay Adams Corleone, and Coppola later said he wanted her reputation for eccentricity to humanize Kay's outsider status. Her salary for this career-defining role, a modest $35,000, reflecting her relative inexperience. By today's standards, that's almost laughable for such an iconic film. But here's where the magic of Hollywood residuals truly comes into play. The film grossed $250 million worldwide on a $6 million budget, which translates to over $1.8 billion when adjusted for inflation. As a SAG-AFTRA member, Keaton received back-end points and royalties from home video sales, cable reruns, and eventually streaming platforms that wouldn't exist for another 3 decades. Estimates place her lifetime earnings from the Godfather trilogy at $5 million, with the original film alone contributing $1 to $2 million over time through perpetual syndication. That initial $35,000 paycheck covered the basics, rent on a small Los Angeles apartment, and a used Volkswagen Beetle for commuting to auditions. But those residuals became the foundation of her empire, allowing her to start thinking strategically about wealth, not as something to spend immediately, but as something to cultivate and grow over decades. Keaton later reflected in a 2022 Hollywood Reporter interview, "I was terrified. I didn't understand why me," capturing both the insecurity and the meteoric rise that would eventually lead to generational wealth. The mid-1970s brought even more wealth through her remarkably fertile partnership with Woody Allen, both creatively and romantically. The film adaptation of Play It Again, Sam, in 1972, paid her around $50,000, double her Godfather salary, buoyed by the stage play's buzz. Sleeper in 1973 brought approximately $75,000, while Love and Death in 1975 paid between $80,000 and $100,000. Each film built her reputation as someone who could anchor comedies with both depth and commercial appeal. deal, steadily increasing her market value in an industry that noticed bankability above all else. But the residuals were where real wealth accumulated, creating passive income streams that required no additional work. Sleeper and Love and Death alone added $500,000 to $1 million in residuals by the 1980s through the VHS boom that transformed home entertainment economics. This was money that flowed in while she slept, while she vacationed, while she worked on completely different projects. This was passive income before most people even understood the concept, quietly building her fortune in the background. Then came Annie Hall in 1977, the game changer, the wealth accelerator that would transform Keaton from well-paid actress to genuine Hollywood royalty. Her salary climbed to between $100,000 and $150,000, but that upfront payment was just the beginning of the financial windfall this film would generate. The film earned $40 million on a $4 million budget, a return that made studio executives ecstatic. It won Best Picture and she won Best Actress, cementing her status as an A-list talent who could carry a film to both critical and commercial success. The residuals from Annie Hall were absolutely explosive, an estimated $10 million over her lifetime from cable reruns, DVD sales, and streaming rights. But the wealth didn't stop there. Her oversized menswear look became a cultural phenomenon that transcended the film itself. Fedora replicas generated licensing fees, fashion lines spawned endorsement deals worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, and her androgynous style became a 1970s icon that created revenue streams extending far beyond traditional acting income. This Oscar win transformed her earning potential overnight in ways that are hard to overstate. Her post-Annie Hall asking price jumped to $500,000 minimum per film, a tenfold increase from her early career rates. Endorsement opportunities flooded in from luxury brands eager to associate themselves with her unique aesthetic. Tie-ins with designers like Ralph Lauren. For quiet luxury lines netted $100,000 to $200,000 in early deals, money she immediately reinvested rather than squandered on fleeting luxuries. But behind all the glamour lay a darker reality that Keaton herself would courageously address decades later. During Annie Hall's filming, she battled bulimia triggered by relentless industry pressure to maintain a certain weight and appearance. "All I did was feed my hunger," she revealed to People magazine in 2017, linking it directly to the era's neurotic roles that both made her wealthy and threatened to consume her psychologically. Yet she channeled her growing wealth into smart investments that would appreciate dramatically over time. In the late 1970s, riding the post-Oscar glow, she bought her first property, a full-floor co-op in New York's San Remo, the Beaux-Arts landmark on Central Park West, for around $200,000 to $300,000. The apartment hosted intimate gatherings with Al Pacino, her on-and-off romantic partner throughout the 1970s and early 1980s, and Woody Allen, blending professional networking seamlessly with personal solace. This wasn't just a home. It was a wealth-building machine disguised as a living space, an asset that would appreciate by over 5,000% while simultaneously serving as both sanctuary and strategic networking venue. Every dinner party, every script reading, every intimate gathering served multiple purposes in building both her career and her fortune. By 1979's Manhattan, her final major collaboration with Woody Allen, she earned $400,000 for a single film. Her early career total by this point, between $5 and $10 million, built on that initial $35,000 breakthrough and snowballing royalties worth $10 to $15 million that would continue paying out for decades. She understood something that most actors missed entirely. It wasn't about landing the biggest immediate paycheck, but about negotiating back-end deals, securing residuals, and thinking long-term about money in ways that would keep paying dividends long after the cameras stopped rolling. Keaton also invested strategically in her professional wardrobe, deducting $10,000 to $20,000 per film for on-set clothing that doubled as personal acquisitions. Chanel suits, Hermes accessories, bespoke menswear pieces. These items served dual purposes as professional necessities that became valuable personal collections. Individual pieces would later auction for $10,000 to $50,000 each, meaning even her clothing functioned as an investment portfolio disguised as a fashion statement. But the real wealth explosion was still ahead, and it would dwarf everything she'd earned in these formative years. The blockbuster goldmine and luxury empire. The 1980s through 2000s represented Diane Keaton's absolute peak earning years, when her transformation from quirky actress to box office powerhouse translated into multi-million-dollar paydays that would make even Wall Street executives jealous. This wasn't just about getting older and more experienced. It was about strategic positioning, understanding her market value, and refusing to accept anything less than she deserved. By the early 1980s, fresh off her Annie Hall Oscar triumph, Keaton's quote surged to $1 million per film, a staggering figure that reflected her bankable appeal in an industry that rewarded proven commercial success above all else. This era's financial windfalls totaled an estimated $60 to $80 million from acting alone, and Keaton spent this wealth on understated extravagance that perfectly matched her public persona. She chartered Gulfstream jets for impulsive Tuscany escapes that cost approximately $50,000 per round trip in the 1990s. She engaged bespoke wardrobe consultations with Ralph Lauren that yielded $200,000 or more annually in custom tweeds and impossibly soft cashmeres. She built a wine collection from Napa Valley auctions where she'd casually drop $100,000 on rare vintages during downtime between film shoots, treating six-figure purchases as casual hobbies rather than major expenditures. Her high-profile romances with Warren Beatty and Al Pacino made constant tabloid headlines while simultaneously funding even more luxurious experiences. She chartered yachts off the Amalfi Coast for $75,000 weekly. Picture sun-drenched days aboard 100-foot super yachts like the legendary Christina O, with crystal-clear Mediterranean waters, gourmet meals prepared by private chefs, and the kind of old-money elegance that money usually can't buy. These weren't just vacations. They were lifestyle statements where professional triumphs blended seamlessly with hedonistic respites that seemed straight out of the very films she starred in. The decade kicked off with Reds in 1981, Warren Beatty's sprawling, ambitious epic about American radicals that cast her as the fiery Louise Bryant. Her salary was $100,000, modest by today's standards, but representing a significant jump from her earlier work, augmented by back-end points that yielded an additional $500,000 from the film's $50 million domestic gross, which translates to over $150 million when adjusted for inflation. This windfall funded her first major real estate splurge beyond her New York co-op, a $300,000 down payment on a Malibu beach house in 1982, a cedar-shingled coastal retreat with oceanfront decks and the kind of prime Southern California real estate that only appreciates in value. She hosted Warren Beatty and Jack Nicholson at this beach house for lobster feasts catered by Michelin-starred chefs at approximately $5,000 per dinner party. But these weren't just indulgent expenses. They were strategic networking opportunities where professional relationships deepened over caviar and champagne, where future deals were discussed over truffle-laced dishes, where wealth was used to generate even more wealth through carefully cultivated connections with Hollywood's most powerful players. The real money came from Baby Boom in 1987, where she portrayed J.C. Wyatt, the yuppie executive turned reluctant single mum. She earned between $2 and $3 million up front on a $6.5 million budget that ballooned to $40 million at the box office, representing an absurdly profitable return that validated the studio's faith in her bankability. But the syndication proved even more lucrative than the initial theatrical run. Baby Boom generated an estimated $1 million in royalties by 1990 alone from endless lifetime television marathons, creating another passive income stream from a film she'd wrapped years earlier. The 1990s amplified everything exponentially, turning midlife reinvention into absolute gold mines, as Hollywood finally recognized that audiences wanted to see women over 40 thriving on screen. The First Wives Club in 1996 became a career-defining cash cow. Keaton earned between $3 and $4 million up front, plus 5% of the $181 million worldwide gross, which netted an extra $2 to $3 million in back-end profits. That's potentially $7 million from a single film, representing the kind of payday that sets up generations. The film's cultural staying power meant it poured $750,000 yearly in residuals well into the 2000s, creating passive income that required absolutely zero additional work while funding her increasingly eccentric hobbies and luxury purchases. Endorsement deals exploded during this period, leveraging her unique aesthetic into serious money. A $1 million DKNY campaign in 1997 for her Annie Hall Redux eyewear line featuring oversized frames in tortoiseshell sold 100,000 units at $200 each, generating substantial commissions that proved her influence extended far beyond the silver screen into fashion, lifestyle, and consumer behavior. She had become a brand unto herself, where every public appearance generated revenue and every sighting moved merchandise. Keaton bankrolled elite private tutors for her emerging photography interests, spending $75,000 yearly to master the craft under renowned professionals. But this wasn't mere hobby spending. Photography became another revenue stream through book deals, museum exhibitions, and licensing opportunities. She invested $100,000 in rare first-edition books by Hemingway and Fitzgerald, literary treasures sourced from Sotheby's auctions where she'd bid anonymously via phone from her agent's office, a $300,000 library of first editions that appreciated in value while providing intellectual stimulation. Every dollar spent on these cultural artifacts represented blended both personal enrichment and shrewd investment. Producing ventures added crucial layers of income and control to her portfolio. Her $1 million directing fee for Unstrung Heroes in 1995, plus 10% producer back-end from the $7.9 million gross, added approximately $800,000 to her coffers, with Disney plus streaming residuals continuing to generate income decades later. Hanging Up in 2000 netted $2 million total, including script sales and multiple back-end participation points. These ventures diversified her financial risk exposure while providing the creative autonomy that few actresses of her generation enjoyed, allowing her to greenlight projects that spoke to her personal experiences. The 2000s brought Keaton's late-blooming romantic comedy resurgence, where Hollywood finally embraced the coastal grandma aesthetic that she'd pioneered decades earlier. Something's Gotta Give in 2003 earned only $500,000 up front, but Jack Nicholson's chivalric gesture of splitting his back end ballooned her total take to between $7 and $8 million from the $266 million global haul. $8 million from a single film she immediately channeled this windfall into adopting Daughter Duke in 2005, covering approximately $50,000 in international adoption fees, legal costs, and extensive travel expenses to complete the process. Residuals from Something's Gotta Give tallied $1.5 million by 2010 alone via home video sales and pay TV licensing, as Netflix constantly featured it in most watched lists that generated ongoing revenue for years. The film's fashion impact spawned an estimated $2 million in licensing deals for Erica-inspired clothing lines with retailers like J.Crew, where her cashmere turtlenecks became cultural phenomena and wide-leg pants flew off shelves. Fashion had transformed into yet another revenue stream that extended her earning power beyond traditional acting roles. Behind the scenes, Nicholson gifted her a $200,000 Harry Winston diamond pendant after production wrapped, a gesture that joined her growing vault of heirloom jewels. These weren't just sentimental gifts. They were appreciating assets in the form of diamonds and rare gemstones that could be liquidated if necessary or passed down as generational wealth to her children. Every relationship seemed to come with tangible financial benefits that extended beyond emotional connection. The Family Stone in 2005 paid $3 million, Morning Glory in 2010 brought $4 million, and Book Club in 2018 earned $2 million plus sequel bonuses. By decade's end, she sustained $5 to $10 million in yearly income from various sources. Residuals from the Godfather trilogy alone totaled approximately $2 million cumulative over the decades, while First Wives Club syndication provided endless passive income that continued flowing regardless of whether she worked. She invested $5 million in diversified index funds, yielding 7% annually, generating $350,000 in relatively tax-efficient passive income every single year without lifting a finger. She attended the Venice Biennale annually for approximately $25,000, enjoying VIP access and gondola dinners that doubled as cultural immersion and networking with wealthy collectors and industry figures. Every luxury expense served multiple purposes: pleasure, education, networking, and strategic relationship building with people who controlled significant wealth and influence. She chartered seaplanes to Bora Bora for approximately $40,000, where private chefs prepared sesame-crusted tuna in overwater bungalows that cost thousands per night. Family vacations became luxurious bonding experiences, where her children grew up understanding that wealth meant freedom. Freedom to travel anywhere. Freedom to experience the world's finest offerings. Freedom to create memories unburdened by financial constraints. Gucci's 2021 campaign featuring Keaton with Harry Styles paid $1.5 million, shot in luxurious Milan lofts with $100,000 styling budgets that rivaled small film productions. L'Oreal renewals hit $2 million per decade promoting anti-aging serums, proving that her lined, authentic face had become more valuable than Botoxed perfection. She had monetized aging gracefully, turned wrinkles into wealth, and made authenticity more bankable than the pursuit of eternal youth. By 2010, these years of strategic wealth accumulation had pushed her net worth past $80 million, creating a financial bedrock for later real estate ventures and family legacies, all while her strange, cool vibe turned wealth into whimsical self-expression. $100,000 spent on turquoise inlaid jewelry echoing southwestern sojourns, custom pieces from Hopi artisans that functioned as both adornment and cultural artifacts that would appreciate over time. But her most lucrative venture wasn't acting, endorsements, or even producing. It was buying and selling houses with such impeccable taste and timing that it would push her fortune decisively past the $100 million mark. Real estate empire and the $100 million legacy. Diane Keaton's real estate odyssey stands as the crown jewel of her $100 million financial empire, representing not casual house flipping but rather a meticulously curated dynasty of restorations that netted $20 to $30 million in pure profits over 2 decades. Each property wasn't merely an asset on a balance sheet. It was a canvas for her idiosyncratic vision of quiet luxury, where rustic Americana blended seamlessly with modernist whimsy. Every flip generated massive returns while simultaneously showcasing her impeccable taste to an industry that increasingly valued her aesthetic judgment as much as her acting talent. Beginning in the late 1990s as what she described as a therapeutic diversion from the emotional demands of acting, Keaton's flipping habit evolved into a high-stakes passion that would ultimately define her legacy as much as any film role. She poured millions into bespoke renovations that honored historic architecture while infusing deeply personal flourishes. Hand-hewn beams reclaimed from century-old barns, Navajo-woven tapestries cascading over leather club chairs sourced from estate sales, and kitchens featuring vintage Wedgwood stoves that cost thousands to restore. These weren't cookie-cutter flips designed to maximize profit through generic luxury. They were love letters to imperfection, extensively documented in coffee table books that sold over 100,000 copies, and indirectly boosted property values through aspirational branding. She leveraged sophisticated 1031 like-kind exchanges to defer capital gains taxes, swapping one appreciated asset for another without Uncle Sam taking his substantial cut. This tax strategy allowed her to compound gains with remarkable efficiency, turning $7.5 million initial outlays into 9-figure appreciations over relatively short time periods. This wasn't just about buying low and selling high. It was sophisticated financial engineering disguised as artistic passion, the kind of wealth-building strategy that financial advisors recommend to their wealthiest clients. Her portfolio's opulence was breathtaking in its attention to detail and commitment to luxury. Infinity-edge pools shimmered against Pacific sunsets, creating Instagram-worthy vistas long before Instagram existed. Wine cellars were stocked with $200,000 worth of Bordeaux acquired at Napa auctions, where she competed against tech billionaires and hedge fund managers. Guest wings were designed specifically for spontaneous visits from Warren Beatty and Al Pacino, complete with outdoor fire pits for midnight script readings under starlit canopies. Every element served both aesthetic and practical purposes, creating spaces that were simultaneously museum quality and genuinely livable. Keaton's flipping foray ignited in the early 2000s with coastal crown jewels, where oceanfront allure met her knack for unearthing undervalued properties. The Laguna Beach oceanfront masterpiece, acquired in 2004 for $7.5 million, epitomized her early success. This sprawling 1920s Spanish revival perched on Victoria Beach offered 180-degree Pacific vistas that would make even the most jaded real estate investor weak in the knees. Over 2 years, she invested $3 to $4 million in a gut rehabilitation that was as much archaeological restoration as it was renovation. She demolished dated 1980s additions to restore original terracotta tiles that cost thousands per square foot, installed Fleetwood sliding glass walls that blurred indoor-outdoor boundaries and cost more than most people's entire homes, and crafted a chef's kitchen with $50,000 Sub-Zero refrigerators and Carrara marble islands veined like ocean foam. Outdoor luxuries included a saltwater infinity pool cascading toward crashing waves that cost $300,000 to install, hammock-strung loggias for alfresco lobster suppers sourced from Santa Monica's finest purveyors at approximately $1,000 per feast, and a master suite with clawfoot tubs overlooking tide pools where she'd soak amid $20,000 worth of diptyque candles. Sold in 2006 for $12.75 million amid Southern California's pre-crash boom, the $5.25 million profit represented a 70% return on investment that rivaled the best hedge fund managers of the era. She immediately reinvested via 1031 exchange into inland properties while bankrolling family milestones like $200,000 in adoption consultations for son Dexter in 2001. This flip burnished her reputation among A-list neighbors like Kevin Costner and spawned her first design book pitches, with interiors featuring adobe fireplaces and linen-draped four-posters that sold separately for $500,000 to design enthusiasts. Venturing inland, Keaton's mid-2010s flips demonstrated increasingly sophisticated efficiency. The Pacific Palisades Spanish Colonial, acquired in 2012 for $5.6 million, was a 800-square-foot 6-bedroom sprawl on 2 acres with equestrian trails snaking toward Will Rogers State Park. She invested $1.5 million over 4 years in a complete metamorphosis that exercised its sterile 1990s vibe. vibe. Exposed rafter ceilings in great rooms, $100,000 in reclaimed oak flooring milled from century-old barns, and a wine grotto hewn from local sandstone holding 2,000 bottles of Opus 1 at approximately $500 per bottle. That's $1 million wine collection alone. Luxuries whispered understated opulence throughout. A home theater with $50,000 in velvet recliners perfect for Godfather marathons. A gym pavilion overlooking canyons for private Pilates sessions with trainers who charge $20,000 monthly. And a butler's pantry stocked with Villeroy and Boch porcelain for catered galas featuring truffle risotto at approximately $5,000 per event. Flipped in 2016 for $6.9 million to her. Tech mogul, the $1.3 million gain represented a 23% return that was strategically timed to market peaks and rolled into her next project via tax-deferred exchange. Keaton's Southwestern Sojourns added desert poetry to her real estate ledger, where arid palettes inspired lavish adobe restorations. The Tucson Barrio Viejo adobe, a historic 572 square foot mud brick gem on Convent Avenue, bought in 2018 for $1.5 million, represented her most soulful flip. This 1900s relic in the Arts District had once served as a boarding house for silver miners, and she was determined to honor its history. Over 2 years, she funneled $800,000 into painstaking revival, stabilizing saguaro-studded walls with traditional lime plaster at $100,000, installing salvage mesquite beams from Arizona ghost towns, and curating a courtyard with $40,000 in hand-painted Talavera tiled fountains. Interiors evoked her strange aesthetic through $25,000 Navajo blankets draped over leather daybeds, apothecary-style kitchens with $15,000 in copper pots for authentic chili preparations, and a library wing shelved with $50,000 in rare Edward Abbey first editions where she'd retreat for memoir writing. Sold in 2020 for $2.6 million to a gallery owner, the $1.1 million profit represented a 73% return that captured Tucson's gentrification wave perfectly. This property inspired her Hudson Grace collaborations featuring linens dyed in desert ochres that would net an additional $1 million in licensing fees. Crowning her dynasty, the Sullivan Canyon house that Pinterest built, a 1920s English Tudor in Brentwood acquired in 2011 for $7.5 million, transcended flipping into something almost sacred. Nestled on 3.5 acres amid avocado groves and hiking trails, this 8,000 square foot estate represented 8 years of meticulous labor, documented in her 2017 best-selling book. She invested between $10 and $15 million in renovations that fused over 500 Pinterest pins into physical reality. Gutted interiors were reborn with $2 million in hand-forged iron chandeliers sourced from Parisian salvage yards, great halls paneled in $500,000 worth of wormy chestnut from Appalachian mills, and a chef's kitchen with $300,000 in Le Cornu ranges for preparing heirloom tomato tarts. Luxuries reached almost symphonic levels. A 20,000 bottle wine cellar with climate-controlled niches for $100,000 magnums of Romani Conti, equestrian stables retrofitted as yoga pavilions for $150,000, and master bathrooms with $75,000 freestanding tubs carved from Montana soapstone overlooking wildflower meadows. Listed on March 24, 2025, at $28.9 million amid whispers of her sudden decline, the property featured bespoke avocado orchards with $20,000 hand pollination irrigation systems and a library fortress housing $1 million in leather-bound folios. By May, a $1.4 million price slashed to $27.5 million failed to lure buyers. Tech executives reportedly balked at its uninstagrammable quirks that prioritized authentic character over modern minimalism. Left unsold at her October passing, it's valued between $25 and $30 million for her heirs, with interiors featuring brass-trimmed fireplaces and silk wallpapered boudoirs already eyed for Christie's design auctions that could bring $2 to $3 million. This estate encapsulated her approach to wealth. A helipad for hosting Woody Allen reunions cost $100,000 to install. $50,000 annually went toward arborists maintaining heritage oaks, and quiet philanthropy included $200,000 to local conservancies preserving canyon views that benefited the entire community. Every element served multiple purposes in her vision of what wealth should accomplish. Other notable flips wove through her dynasty with impressive consistency. A 2009 Beverly Hills Tudor purchased for $9.1 million and sold in 2011 for $10.75 million, netted $1.65 million in profit that funded $500,000 in Georgia O'Keeffe-influenced art acquisitions. A 2025 listed Lloyd Wright gem that she'd restored for $2 million with an asking price of $12 $12.9 million, evoked Frank Lloyd Wright's organic architecture through $100,000 in cantilevered decks that seemed to float above the landscape. Total properties flipped. More than 10 over 2 decades, with profits compounding to between $20 and $30 million. This lucrative side gig created a financial bulwark against the inevitable ebbing of acting residuals, ensuring that her children Dexter and Duke would inherit not just property deeds, but a legacy of salvaged splendor. Tax-sheltered trusts now yield $1 to $2 million annually in perpetuity, allowing her save the house, save the soul philosophy to echo through generations in the form of quiet luxury. That money can buy, but taste must curate. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed watching this video, click on one of the boxes playing on your screen to watch more similar content.